let's get into leadership. Clearly, there is a leadership void in Santa Clara that starts at the tippy top with Jed. But I want to start with the locker room. Who are the leaders on this team? Every team has leaders, and the Niners have leaders too. We can debate the effectiveness that they are, but who are the leaders of this team? Because they have to have some, right?
I'd say George Kittle and Fred Warner are good leaders. I know it's preferable to have some leaders in their upper 20s and lower 30s, but I think they have a lot of young leaders. I think Jaquiski Tartt is a guy in the secondary that's coming on strong, and this is going to touch on a later question, I think, but there's some concerns with Jimmy Garoppolo, but I think the way the guys rally around him in the media and everything, I think that shows that he's likable. He might not be the rah-rah leader that Tom Brady or Drew Brees is, but I think he has the capability when he has the confidence to be that lower level leader that a team needs.
Hold your horses. We're going to get to Jimmy. That's a good answer. All right, Leo.
So I'm going to say George Kittle on the offensive side, because he's probably the one guy on there we haven't heard make any excuses.
Exactly.
And then on the defense, Fred Warner is another guy who hasn't made any excuses, just saying we need to get better. And same with Tartt. Kyle Juszczyk in a KNBR interview said that Tartt was in the locker room and told him in the training room, like, hey, this is the week we're going to turn things around. We're going to win this one, and we're going to get right back on track. So I think that speaks volumes for Tartt saying that to another veteran looked at leader with Kyle Juszczyk on that team. So it's probably those four players as of right now.
I'm going to kind of steer this a different direction. Just look at the guys that wear the captain's stitch on their chest. You got Jimmy Garoppolo, who I question his true ability to be a true leader. Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey, who have both made a handful of excuses in their media press conferences over the last couple weeks. George Kittle is the leader of the team. Just like how Leo said, he hasn't made any excuses yet. He was on a CBS show and said, our offense is fully healthy. We had our ideal starting lineup on the field against the Dolphins. We're out of excuses on the offensive side of the ball. And then Richard Sherman, who him not being on the field has hurt this team, because I feel like he is the alpha in the locker room. He's the guy that holds everybody accountable, especially on that side of the ball. And then Fred Warner, and his inexperience being in his third year, I feel like he doesn't have that same comfort to be able to get in guys' faces and hold them accountable, guys who have been in the league longer than him. It's tough being in your third year and being a team captain. I think Mike McGlinchey's having that same struggle. He's struggling for one. It's only his third season. And now he has Trent Williams to look up to, who I'm sure is completely different than Joe Staley in a lot of different dimensions in the locker room. So there's a huge leadership void. It's nice to hear Jaquiski Tartt is stepping up, because he's really been holding down that secondary group. But as far as the guys that were actually voted on as captains by their teammates, it's a huge concern to me, a huge concern. And I'd say Richard Sherman and George Kittle are the two guys that are truly, truly deserving of it, because of who they are in the locker room and not so much their play on the field.
Okay. Agree with you guys. I'm going two names, and we Maverick identified right off the bat. It's Kittle and Warner. Here's the thing. I mean, like, McGlinchey has like a leader's voice. He talks like a leader. Mm-hmm. But he's not good enough to be a leader. To actually lead, you have to be one of the best players in your position. So the only people on this team, well, two people who on this team who are qualified to lead are George Kittle and Fred Warner, and I think they're doing as well as they can for young guys. Kittle hasn't made any excuses. He's talked about how he just doesn't have the experience to really. He's never been in this situation before, so he's learning. So those two, I'm going to name two guys who are not leaders. One, Eric Armstead, not a leader, which is too bad, because DeForest Buckner really was. I felt like Buckner was one of the people who established a culture on this team, not Armstead. Armstead's a good player, but not a leader. And then two, Trent Williams. I mean, this guy was replacing the ultimate leader on the 49ers, and we all assumed that he would be such an upgrade. But now that we see that he's not, I think it's interesting to go back and do hindsight and realize, well, look, I mean, here's a guy who sat out an entire year. I mean, he may have had a reason. It might have been the right call, but that's not what leaders do. I mean, by definition, unless you're leading everyone to sit out for a year. He was out. So he's on his own. That's just how, and that's fine. But you can't ask that or expect that guy to be a leader. Plus, he's never been on a good team, really. So those two guys just don't have it in them. And I really respect and admire that Kittle and Warner are stepping up because they're younger than those guys. I mean, Trent Williams should be the leader on this team and has no interest. None.
I have an interesting question for you guys. So a lot of the guys we were saying that were leaders, how many of them are actually like tied to the team past 2021? We were talking about Fred Warner, and then Richard Sherman was mentioned, Jaquiski Tartt was mentioned, and then guys that Grant was pointing on that weren't leaders, like Eric Armstead and then Mike McGlinchey, that they could be on the team for longer than that. So I just think that's an interesting thing that they have so many guys that are pegged as leaders but need those contracts, so that they got to figure out cap flexibility soon to get that Warner contract, which is probably going to be pretty hefty. If they're going to move on from Tartt, that might be a big blow, pegging Jimmy Ward as that new secondary guy.
Yeah, it's good to hear that Tartt's stepping up as a leader because Jimmy Ward ate one. Sorry, Jimmy.